St. Thomas Episcopal presents From Maintenance to Mission, a 5-part series on moving our focus towards growth and the mission field.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to St. Thomas Episcopal Church and School in San Antonio, Texas. We are very fortunate to have with us as our interviewee on tonight's From Maintenance to Mission series, the mayor of San Antonio, Mayor Ron Nirenberg. This is an amazing conversation. I think a very energizing conversation. I'd love for you to listen to his observations about the fault lines of poverty and lack in our city, how the pandemic has exposed how vulnerable the most vulnerable in our city really are, in ways that a church like ours can respond to it. I was particularly interested in the things he had to say about housing insecurity and homelessness. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Mayor Nirenberg. Mayor Ron Nirenberg, welcome. So grateful for this time with you and to have this conversation. I know our friends at St. Thomas are really excited about this conversation too. So thank you for making the time for us.
It's great to be with you, Reverend, and all the St. Thomas family.
Please call me Mike. You want to call me Mike. The first question I have for you is like, how are you? Oh my gosh. A once in a generation pandemic and a once in a generation ice storm. I just, I know people ask me that all the time when they worry about me as the pastor of a church, and I worry about you as our mayor. Like, how are you? How are your family? How are you holding up? And how can we pray for you?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mike. In order to answer that question, I would have to have some time for self-reflection, which unfortunately has not available for a while. But no, I'm doing okay. I will admit that my days are fueled by adrenaline mostly. So at some point I will experience adrenaline withdrawal when things kind of calm down a bit. But we've been fighting some degree of crisis for the better part of a year now with regard to coronavirus, as well as, the winter events. And then, of course, there are very important social justice and equity issues that are happening in our community as well. I mean, all of these things happening at the same time is a challenge for any community. But, San Antonio, I think, has pulled together as San Antonio does to help each other through. And I'm very grateful for that. But we're doing okay. My family is doing well. My son is back to school.
Great.
It's as a middle schooler, I don't think anything is quite normal. So he's going through all the trials and travails of a middle schooler. My wife has been working virtually for the year and has been doing untold amounts of work related to keeping our household going that I'm also eternally grateful for. But we're keeping it together. I appreciate that.
If I read correctly, your wife works for HEB, right? Isn't that right?
Yes.
There's you and the government, and there's like me and the church. But honestly, the real heroes in this, is it or is it not HEB? I mean, what would we do without that? Holy, she's amazing.
Absolutely.
I mean, God bless them too and the work they've done.
They are truly part of our first responders. They are the backbone of emergency response in our community. They pick up the slack in so many different ways to keep people fed and full of hope.
I'm
We're
really
lucky to have them.
We are indeed, right? So our thanks to her too. Gosh, I was sorely tempted in thinking about what I wanted to ask you, just to talk about leadership, and I would love to do that with you one day in a nerdy sort of way, because I've been the rector here at St. Thomas for 2 years, and like there's lots of things I wanted to do here, but the pandemic had other ideas, and we've just been in crisis mode virtually the whole time. You must feel the same way. There's things I know that were on your heart to do for the city, like infrastructure and addressing some of the issues that you talked about, that you just have to like pick it up and put it over here. And now you're becoming a a communicable disease expert. Like how are you able to make that transition and just
into an armchair epidemiologist? We have great people around us, and my role has been to create access and provide unfettered information and be a voice of consistent confidence for our community. And public trust, as I've said from the very start, has been our main tool to fight the pandemic. And thankfully here in San Antonio, we've had people from all professions, particularly in public health, that really want to get out there and help. And the big part of that is just sharing information, giving people the information that they need to protect themselves and their families, during this crisis. But I will say, you're absolutely right. The priorities have changed. They changed immediately when this pandemic began. But in many ways, trying to see the blessing in the darkness, it does have crises present opportunities for us to reassess what's important. And frankly, here in San Antonio, one of the reasons why I ran for mayor, one of the things, or the agenda that I brought into office, was to address the unevenness and the brokenness of our city's foundation, those things that people need, opportunity, safety, equity in our community to thrive. Yeah. And you see that laid bare during a crisis like this, as many people have discussed. Lots of stories have been written about how this crisis has affected the most disadvantaged members of our community. It has exposed our weaknesses as a community. You saw the food bank lines double overnight. Things like that kind of show the challenges in our community in a very conspicuous way. Yeah. But it was really those challenges that we were focused on addressing prior to the pandemic. Now we have the attention of the entire world on them.
I've been struck, haven't you, that how the face of poverty is so hidden to the privileged. Yeah. And like, even through the pandemic, unless you didn't turn on the news, you could live in San Antonio, especially up here where we are in North San Antonio, just on, we're right at 1604 and 281. Just right here is Stone Oak, and right here is Hollywood Park. And like, you could get by okay without ever seeing the face of that suffering. I mean, the enormous suffering that has visited our city.
Suffering in silence and darkness, but it affects us all. The poverty affects everyone, regardless of what side of the poverty line they live on, or what part of town they live on. It affects us all. I mean, it limits. The community does well when we all do well, and opportunity is limited to us as a city, as a community. Opportunities that you or your children might take advantage of if we are continuing to fight or seeing a disproportionate amount of poverty in our community that we have to address. Yeah. And that's one of the areas that I think has been a focus of our response efforts to the pandemic, but also in recovery. I think we're showing the country how we can address these issues long term.
I'd like to share an observation with you and get you to respond to it. I moved here 2 years ago from McKinney, Texas, which is north of Dallas. Mm-hmm. And when I got the opportunity to come to San Antonio, I was like, this is great. It's going to be like a Mexican New Orleans. I can't wait to get here. And I will say to you, I have been on a bit of a taqueria tour, and anyway, I've enjoyed that. However, my observation is, I have been stunned about how segregated the city is and feels. I felt like it would be much more blended culturally than what I've experienced it to be. And I haven't been here long enough so I could tell you where the fences are exactly, but it does feel like there's fences. Am I right about that? Do you feel?
Yeah, and I think that's a part of our history that we are rediscovering. Many people are familiar with, the term redlining. Yeah. That was a policy of many cities back decades ago that has since been stricken from the books for constitutionality reasons, but it has led to generations of communities, neighborhoods being, like you said, socioeconomically segregated, if not racially segregated. That's still a remnant of the past that we see in many southern cities, including our own. The interesting part about San Antonio that I love about the city, though, is that we are also a city of faith. Yeah. And we're a military city. Right. And in those two communities, you see a mix and mingling of cultures despite differences in backgrounds and culture and language that creates a sense of familiarity and family. Right. That is very quintessential San Antonio. The reason why, I always describe San Antonio to my friends who don't live here as we are the only city in the country where you can have a championship celebration break out in the middle of the interstate and it's a family-friendly event. Yeah. We have figured out over the hundreds of years to work with each other despite our cultural differences. And that's something that I hope continues. Yeah. Politics makes it challenging, but somehow, some way, and as demonstrated through this pandemic, despite all the political challenges, we have continued to show that as a city. And one of the things that I'm most grateful about living in this city for. Me too. I love it that the RPMs run a little lower down here than they did up in the Metroplex, which I like. And it's got a small town feel to it while still being a metropolitan area. So we are a different speed. Yes. I want to value, because I really value your time. We want to get your advice. Like, we're a church of about 1,000 members in North San Antonio. We have a beautiful property here. What would your advice, or what would your calling or mission to a church like ours be, as far as what are the needs that you see in the city, and how could a church like ours, do you think, best mobilize to meet those needs? And you can speak corporately to just the communities of faith in the city, but also just to us as an individual church as well. What are you seeing, and what could we do to help? Well, I appreciate that. I'll speak generally, and then I'll get into some specifics. Number one, I appreciate this question very much, because anyone who is observing the world knows that there is an erosion of public trust in our institutions. Yeah. The media, government, schools and education, even medicine. If you look at what's happened during this pandemic, there is an erosion of public trust, and that's a bad thing. And I wish it would reverse itself. I hope someday it will. Yeah. The only institution that I can think of where that erosion has been spared is in our faith communities, in our churches, in our temples and places of worship, where you have people from all different backgrounds coming together under one roof, despite their differences, and establishing themselves on a body of faith in one with one important mission. Yeah. Under the golden rule to treat each other as we would want to be treated. In our churches, you find still that strong trust with one another, and for that reason, our churches are in our faith community are the best positioned to carry forward important issues that lift us all up. Mm. So I would say probably the two most important things right now that we're working on, that we need members of the faith community to stand up and help us to champion, are fighting poverty and making sure that people have safe shelter. Yeah. And they work hand in hand. So obviously, as you mentioned, the fight against poverty is really a fight against awareness, or the lack thereof. Yep. A lot of people, I think, go through their lives and don't really grasp the level of poverty that's living across the street and how it affects them. And the fact that poverty also links up with poor health outcomes and challenges over generation that hold not only families back, but entire communities back. So helping people to see and be aware of poverty that lives next door, and then what we can do to address it, I think is really important. Getting to know the rest of the community that maybe not in your social circle is extraordinarily important for us to build community. The other thing is we have a very focused effort and mission behind safe, affordable housing where people can live with dignity in our community, and everyone deserves to live with dignity in our community. And our faith community last year signed on to a pledge to help advance that movement, working to fight homelessness, working to make sure that the churches in severe events are providing warm, safe places for people to stay. So advancing the cause for housing with dignity in our community is another. So those are two really important agenda items. There's a whole host of others though.
What do you think's driving homelessness in San Antonio? Just the cost of housing. And
so the challenge with answering that is that there's not just one issue. There's so many issues. Homelessness in our community and frankly every other urban area in the country is highly correlated with other social challenges, drug addiction, mental health issues, domestic violence. We are starting to see also housing affordability and unemployment correlated with homelessness. But there is a continuum of social issues that have to be addressed if we're going to ultimately address what the symptom is, and that is homelessness. Yeah. So that's been our challenge here in San Antonio, is that when we're addressing homelessness, it's not just about putting people into a shelter, it's about addressing those underlying causes. So when you see our Department of Human Services out talking with people that are unsheltered, that are in some cases sleeping on in the tunnels, we're trying to get to know them and help them come into services that are available to them to achieve restitution, rehabilitation. So ultimately they are, sustaining themselves and finding opportunity and can live a thriving life in San Antonio. We have no shortage of services, no shortage of organizations that provide them, and really no shortage of shelter space or housing. Really? It's just our challenge is getting to know people as human beings with souls and dignity in our community, despite the fact that they are in the most desperate condition. Getting to know them and helping them or helping us understand their individual needs to get them into services to ultimately become whole again.
Right. And what really energizes me as a church leader is to tell St. Thomas, we can be a part of this solution in the city. Like, we don't have to stand to the side and watch our poor mayor with everything else he's got going on try to hack at it, right? Like there's ways that we can engage this, and even the smallest things, can make a huge difference. And I think it's incumbent upon the church to help connect compassion to their faith.
Yes, absolutely.
That compassion and care is not a political expression so much as it is a spiritual expression,
And compassion is absent without action.
Right.
Compassion is active. And also, I would say in the political environment, there is a straight line between compassion and civility. You cannot have one without the other. Yeah. So treating people with dignity, despite whether or not you might agree or disagree with them, is really important. Obviously, we need to agree on some fundamental human values that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Yeah. But civility is an expression of compassion for other people.
Yeah. Right. Agreed. A couple of final questions I have for you. I want you to know how amazed and blessed I feel to be in a city where you and Judge Wolf have worked so closely together. I mean,
thank you.
We were all, I hope people have told you this, all that must-see TV, we would gather around when the news came on to just watch y'all day after day, and just the honesty and the forthrightness and the plain manner of speaking. I think that's what, if you look in history, every great leader that's led a people through crisis has been honest.
Thank you.
All the way through. And that was one of the keys to getting them through. I mean, did y'all come about that naturally, or what did you, like, how did that, how did that happen between y'all? And like, how'd you get organized? And
so we made an active decision, a concerted effort from the very beginning of this crisis, really when the first planes landed, that we needed to stay coordinated. We needed to stay tight and do things together, because the county controls some services and has certain jurisdiction. The city has certain services and jurisdictions. We needed to stay coordinated. As we got further into it, our roles evolved to more than that. And it wasn't, on purpose, it just happened that way. The first one being the fact that, San Antonio, I think, has shown itself to be, to stand very tall in the response to this crisis, because we do what San Antonians do. We work together, we stand together, we rally around one another, and we show excellent teamwork. And so what I've come to learn is that the judge and I working together so closely and being visible in the public during this pandemic has been an expression of that teamwork for our city, but it also has modeled how we want folks to work together. And I talk to my peers across the country all the time. It is not normal to see that in other cities, or it's not the rule in every city. In fact, there are many cities in our state that are having challenges because they don't have that level of coordination. But because of that, and it goes across jurisdiction, not just the city and the county, but businesses in the public sector, the community and educational institutions, you name it, we're seeing teamwork across the board.
Yeah.
We are on as strong a foundation as any in the country to come back stronger from this pandemic. The other thing it has done for us, I think, is that level of access and consistency. The fact that, again, we've had so many different orders, and we've had political challenges. We've had things rescinded that we want to have continue, and I hope everyone is continuing to wear their masks.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of confusion, but one of the things that we've been able to do every night is just provide the information, the good, bad, and the ugly, so that people can use that information to protect themselves. And we've always said, we're not going to beat this pandemic, through fines and arrests. We're going to beat this pandemic because people care about each other, and they're going to do the right thing. And they know what to do when we provide that information. We would like to have mandates, because there are folks who just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And we need to protect for that. But the reality is, when people have the information and are armed with the data and the facts, they do the right thing by and large. And good on San Antonio for that.
Winston Churchill did it with England. Told them the truth, and the nation, and they rallied. FDR did it with the United States, World War II, and even with the polio epidemic. It's like, we'll do it if we just have a leader that'll call us to it. You'll love this. We have a little marquee out in the front, and our marquee today says, "Following Jesus, wearing masks." That's what we're gonna do. I hope that when you have this time of reflection, that you'll be able to reflect about how different San Antonio has been led this time from the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. I did some reading about that. I don't know if anybody's shown you that, about how slow the city was to react back in 1918. And that there was a statistic that showed 53% of the population got sick because they just waited and couldn't organize. And I think one day, when you are older and grayer than we already are, the story will be written.
I'm on my way.
I hope there is written a story about how differently you and Judge Wolf and your teams reacted and led from then. But still, it's staggering. I looked at it today, 198,969 cases. And this is what is amazing to me, 2,853 deaths. That there's an ocean of grief that's flowing in our city right now. I think needs to be tended to and ministered to.
Absolutely. And every single one of those numbers is someone who has been lost in the most, unbelievable way, where you can't actually be with the one that you love while they're fighting this illness in the final hours. That's devastating. And to hear the stories of friends and family who have had to go through that and multiply that that many times over.
Yeah.
The leading cause of death pretty much in any city in the country is heart disease. It takes roughly around 3,000 people a year from our community. COVID has taken the same number, essentially. So this is not a joke. And that's why you see me sometimes get upset when presented with questions that imply someone is taking it as a joke. This has not been a joke to those families who have been grieving.
Yeah. And I think it's an opportunity, if we have the eyes to see it, to see the fault lines of poverty and need and lack in our city. It's like you said, it's helped us see it if we have the eyes to see it. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say to our church or challenge us as a church about how we can help in this hour?
I'm very grateful for your time, Mike. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to worshiping in St. Thomas sometime very soon. I think we're starting to see the end of the tunnel here. We just have to hang on a little bit longer. Please wear your masks. But as I said when this started, and I can say with a little bit more gusto now, the sun also rises.
Yeah.
There are so many reasons for us to see and be optimistic right now, anytime in San Antonio, but particularly right now. We are getting through this through the strength of our compassion and care for one another. We are going to see a brighter day, and it is right around the corner. And I want to thank everybody there for doing your part. I appreciate the invitation today and look forward to seeing you in person. The sun also rises.
It does.
And we look forward to that.
The sun, the star sun, and the SON sun, the Easter will be a beautiful, I hope we can
That's right.
unlatch all of its metaphorical power of death and resurrection, that we all have those seasons in our lives, and this is one of the seasons that we just happen to go through corporately. And, may it be said of us that we supported each other and helped each other through it. Anyway, I want to ask St. Thomas to pray for our good mayor. We do lift up our leaders every Sunday in church in our prayers, and know that this conversation we'll be holding you a little more forward in our heart that we've ever been able to have this time with you. So pray for our mayor, St. Thomas. One day I'd love to have a mass for the COVID dead when this is all over, and to host a church service where we invite people to come and just have a corporate time of mourning and grief. And when the day is right to do that, when we have the all clear, maybe we'll invite you to that if you can come, or because I just think it's something that we haven't been able to process, that we need to process, the mothers and sons and fathers and grandfathers and daughters that have been lost. Anyway, Mayor, we appreciate you.
I'll be there.
Yeah, that would be. I'll let you know if we can pull it off.
Right.
I love to see us do a big memorial too. Like, imagine 3,000 luminaria, that people can come and drive by and say our city has suffered such a great loss.
Yeah.
And it'll be a way. It's time for us to be together and serve together. Thank you, sir. You're a blessing.
Mike, thank you so much, and you as well, and look forward to seeing you very soon in person.
Yep, me too. Be well.
You too. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Right, take care. Amazing. What a blessing. Thank you for your time and attention tonight. I hope that you will do what I asked you to do in the interview. And let's just pray for this guy. Pray for the mayor. Pray for his wife and his son. And then pray for all those who help him. Pray for the leadership in our city. Pray for Judge Wolf. the burden that they've been carrying is a heavy one. And I ask you to pray for them, that the Lord would help them bear that burden and just sustain them and their families. And then pray for our church, pray for ways that we can become a leader in the social transformation of our city, and pray for ways that you might help. Ask for God to speak to you about what your part is in changing our city for the better and advancing the kingdom of God on the earth. Again, thanks for your time. Our final session is next week, and I hope this finds you well. Have a blessed rest of your day today, and remember, God loves you.